This is a new entry, Gulf Coast box turtle number 30. And here it is over here. It has a distinctive notch on the front, and it doesn't match any others that we've cataloged. This is the first entry of Gulf Coast box turtle number 30. It's March 27th, 2020. And shell pattern looks like this. Has a distinctive missing piece of shell right here, so I'm not going to go ahead and try to notch this. And its disposition at first was timid using the scale. I didn't have to hold it, didn't have to use the brick, and then later on it's kind of gotten more active. That's the shell pattern. The dome height was 73, which is across here. Length is 159. Width is 121 millimeters. And what I do is I take the data here and go through the whole list I've got of turtles, which is now up to 30. And I go through and look at the dome height, which is 73, and rule out the ones that are larger. So it could be a number 10, but then they're not going to get shorter in length, so I rule that one out. Could be number 12, but I just cataloged that yesterday, and it's a totally different turtle. It's very easy to identify. Then you go through here, it could be number 15. I looked at some old videos from that, and that's from 2 years ago, and the weight could be just about it, but I looked at the pattern, and it's a totally different shell pattern, so it's not 15. I was considering number 18 to be a possible match, and if I made an error it could be that, but it's just the pattern looks so different. 19 hasn't been seen for 3 years. That's a remote possibility. And I looked at 22 and 23, and they're totally different. And same thing with 24. So we got a new entry here. And it does have an undercut, which generally is a male. It has yellow arms, which tends to be a female. So I'm not going to mark that down whether it's male or female yet. But if you go over here and look at the discovery chart here, I've got the dome height and the mass. That's the dome height and the mass. This is versus the year. Now over time what happens, some of these get run over, like number 3, where you haven't seen them for a long time, and then when you do discover a new one, it can't be that because they're not going to get way smaller in size in the dome height. So it gets to be hard to identify without chipping them, which I haven't done yet. What's what? You go over to this chart is the length versus the dome height. And so if you discover a new turtle, it could be one of these that's grown up because you haven't seen them for a few years. Generally, they're not going to get shorter in length, or the dome height's not going to get smaller. So the one I just discovered is very close into here. That's why you look at these first, 8, 9, 7, and 21, as far as the appearance, maybe some other features like notches. So when you have got 30 in a study, it gets sometimes difficult to find what's what. So with this one here, we've got this notch in the front, which is very good ID. If we see it a little bit later, that's going to be there for years. Got a missing piece of the shell. And again, it could be a duplicate of one of these that's grown up. And I tend to rule that out if the shell pattern is radically different. Now this shell damage here This is not like brand new because this is kind of rounded off. It's actually kind of looks worn looking, or it's smooth because it's growing back. So the ones that I got data on from a year ago, this can't be that because this is not brand new damage. This has been here probably for a couple years. This will slowly grow back. And then some of the other ones that I ruled out, I had notches on here. And if I had to guess, this turtle's probably at least 7 to 20 years old, maybe older. Here's what the shell pattern looks like. This does have yellow arms, which most of the females here have around. The eye color is kind of not a very good indication on these Gulf Coast box turtles. It does have an undercut slightly, which tends to be a male. And hard to measure what the length of the tail is because they always box up a lot of times. The females that are around this area generally have a high dome height to the length, and the two males that were around here generally have a very low dome height to the length. And that's over here. So if it's got a high dome height to the length, it's going to be on this side of the curve, and that's number 1. It's been recovered this year, plus number 4 and number 12. And then we're going to put the new entry 30, which is going to be in here. So I really need to chip these. I haven't attempted to do that. This was just hanging around the front porch when it was discovered. This is a new entry, Gulf Coast Box Turtle number 30. And here it is over here. It has a distinctive notch on the front, and it doesn't match any others that we've cataloged. Eye color looks mostly about dark. I don't really see too much red. It does have yellow arms, which most of the females have, but you've got an undercut, which generally means a male, and you can't see any tail action here. Several of the males around here, the Gulf Coast box turtles, the arms are not yellow. So I don't know if that's just a trait of just the certain clusters of the type of genes that are around here. So I don't know if the yellow arms is an indication of female or not. Or that's just, you know, like the shell patterns vary.